This comes from Donnell Brown, and I'm surprised we haven't mentioned it on the podcast. So there were reports that the Pelicans were really interested in Isaiah Stewart. So Donnell wants to know, what are the future plans for Isaiah Stewart? And I'll go one step further. Do you think, with all the moves that they made, he's still in the starting lineup?
You know what's crazy? And rake me over coals if you want to. With us talking about the Pistons' future for the past hour and 11 minutes that we've been going on so far, that is not even a person I factored all the way into these moves. I think that, for one, I think that Isaiah Stewart is a good player. Here's why I say that. He's hustle and he's hard. He's somebody that you definitely need on your team. I think when they use him as a low post guy, as opposed to trying to turn him into a stretch forward, that's when you're really able to see the true. You're able to really appreciate his game the most because even though he can hit a three, I don't think he's really a stretch four. I think he's just more so of a guy that gets his bread and butter, you know, 5 to 10 feet away from the basket. But when you're talking about the future plans of this team and they've already shown the desire to want that stretch four, I think you could see some interesting things happen with Isaiah Stewart moving forward. This is also a guy that has had some injury issues as well and has been out for. I mean, he was last season. He was out for points at a time with the shoulder injury. Now this week, now this year, not this week, this year is we're talking about ankle issues. So they offered him the 4 year, $64 million deal last year. If my math is correct, and if I'm wrong, again, rake me over cold, I believe that with the way the salary cap is going to go up, Stewart's deal is going to be more closer towards the mid-level exception. So I think that when we were talking about them trading their picks and trying to make some moves, he has a salary that is going to be very, very friendly to be able to move. It's just all about if you decide that you want to move him. I think that what we've seen from the Pistons in this sample size over the past, you know, let's just say 5 games, you have to. I think bringing him off the bench should be for consideration, just off of how they're moving. So for this season, when he comes back, I see them trying to slow roll him in there. He might be a rotation player off the bench. Beyond that, we got to see. I see it's. I have no intel, but I see a situation where something could happen because he has a very trade friendly contract, and
Mm-hmm.
for the team that they want, there would have to be some changes.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because when I look at Isaiah Stewart, we didn't even talk about him for like the first hour, and
Yeah,
I'm and I'm like, well, Asar was playing power forward yesterday, and I think the way they've been using Asar is how you get away with his lack of shooting.
yep,
With Stewart, they had him off the bench before he had an injury. He had like a toe injury, and then he had an ankle injury, and then he's
yep.
been out with the ankle injury ever since then. I think where I see his value is at the backup center position because the drop off between Jalen Duren and James Wiseman right now is very noticeable.
Mhm.
I think if you transition Isaiah Stewart to a backup five or even a backup four, whatever you want to do, I think he's better suited off the bench. And I love that
Yeah.
you mentioned that looking at his contract for the foreseeable future, it is going to be a very, very tradable contract. I know Dallas has been interested in Isaiah Stewart. Probably not anymore since they did trade for PJ Washington. Boston
Yeah.
is always sniffing around with Isaiah Stewart. Um, I think there are going to be contenders that always need a guy like Isaiah Stewart, and I think that's why I like his game. I think starting, a lot of fans have a problem with it. They wouldn't have a problem with it. If he was that energy guy, he was that glue guy off the bench. Like if you slot him in at backup center, I think a lot of fans wouldn't be so loud about benching him and having him come off the bench. But that's kind of been my opinion on the whole Isaiah Stewart starting it, trying to make him into the stretch four when he's not really a stretch four. He's more of an undersized five at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just think that's where where it's doing a disservice to him, because I mean first off, Isaiah Stewart's a great guy. Great guy. I mean, he's willing to give you a really in-depth insight into the game and what happened after the game. And he's also accountable. That's another thing that people really don't talk about. He's very accountable. I just think that the trying to convert him to the stretch four it just hasn't worked out. It just hasn't worked out. And I think that the times where Stewart is on the floor and he's played closer to the rim and be in the paint, you've really saw, okay, this version of Stewart could really help out this team moving forward. And to your point, for the backup, if you decide to bring him off the bench behind Jalen Duren, I think that would also be great as well, because now you're using him in a spot where he really gets to play his bully ball, and then you're still keeping this great locker room leader and voice with the team. So again, if you decided to move me as a very trade-friendly contract, but if you decide to keep him, you have to, I believe that there has to be some conversations about type of usage.
Yeah, like I said, I think ultimately the reason why he hasn't been traded is, and I know fans aren't going to want to hear this, is Troy Weaver loves Isaiah Stewart.
So does Monty. So does Monty.
So does Monty. So at the end of the day, I know fans want him gone. They want him traded for whatever it is. I don't know if they don't like him, they don't like his skill set, whatever. I think he has value in the league, and I could see Pistons fans up in arms if we do trade him and he comes back to just bully us. Because it kind of seems like a recurring theme is when we draft someone, he's there for a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to turn into like a Dinwiddie or a Chris Middleton, but if contenders are calling about him, that should tell you all you need to know about him as a player. He's valuable, but he's not valuable the way the Pistons are currently using him. I think they're using him out of position. I think if you played him a good 15 to 20 minutes a night, Pistons fans really wouldn't have any complaints.
Yeah, because I mean the guy knows basketball. He can play basketball. I mean, I'm gonna defend him in that aspect. Again, it's just about the usage, because to your point, Stewart is going to go, if they trade him, Stewart's going to go somewhere else, and he's going to be just what the doctor ordered as far as from a toughness standpoint. And I've heard this, and I'm not going to say where I've heard it from, but, and I did this again, when I say this is not me trying to insinuate Stewart is some bad guy or not, because he's not. But at the same time, you don't want a locker room full of choir boys. And Stewart has shown a tendency to be that enforcer that Piston teams are known and accustomed for having. I mean, you look back on the two championship squad, well, the Bad Boys had a couple of enforcers. Heck, even the going to work Pistons, couple of enforcers, the Wallace Times too. You're gonna need somebody that's gonna be that guy. Stewart, you not only have that guy, you have that guy that wants to be here and see this through. You don't find too many guys that want to be able to see this through with the way this team's performing. There are 82 games in the season. The Pistons have not won 82 games in collective 4 seasons. You don't have too many guys that want to stick around and see that through. So it's like, almost one of those be careful what you wish for things.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I view him as a Kevon Looney for this team. Like Kevon Looney for the Warriors is just an ultimate glue guy, hustles, rebounds, does all the dirty work. And to your point, you don't want choir boys. Like Stewart's about that life, man. Like
he's about that action. We've seen it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, going to games, like I remember Pat Bev. He was saying that he wanted to smoke with Stewart and stuff like that, and he went on his podcast saying like, "Heard you were looking for me." I was just like, "Man, Pat, don't even mess with him."
I mean, shoot. Besides the thing with LeBron, the one thing I always go back to with Stewart was when Draymond Green tried to I guess you could say punk him, and Stewart snatched him up so quick, like on some Mortal Kombat. Get over here! It was like, oh.
Saw the whites of Draymond's eyes. I know exactly. I know that I've seen that play like repetitively. Draymond's like, "Oh shit, I can't punk this kid."
Yeah, so it's like you just hope they figure out a way to use him correctly before just going ahead and shipping him out of town.